We're going to explore the Stitch Creator on the Pfaff Creative icon. Now there's so much that you can do with this particular area, and I encourage you to play around. It is something you need to take time to work with, but I'm going to show you first the fastest, most fun use of it for me, and then we'll get into how you can create your own stitches. Plus, I just did the latest update and found that in the blog section of my SewNet, there was a fun little project called Heartbeat Stitch that was done in the Stitch Creator. So I was thinking we could just walk through some of those because it altered a stitch and combined it with another stitch. So let's just start off with the first part of it. You're going to notice that I'm holding up one of our blocks from our Stitching Cosmos online course. We've featured here the Pfaff floating stitches, but I remember what I did for this red stitch. You notice it's very, very bold. It's a stitch that actually is not normally this bold. It's like a stitch that just comes up and it's a single row of stitches. It's not very, doesn't have a lot of oomph to it unless you were to put in a thicker thread, which means you have to put in a thicker needle. For me, I use a lot of embroidery thread, which is not a thick thread, but all I need to do is open up the Stitch Creator, which when I do so, everything goes blank, but I've got my fabulous grid. Then I can select a stitch like I had, and it was in our menu. That particular one was in menu 5.2. It was just one of the simple stitches. Here, 29, and as you can see how it's actually made. So one of the things I love to do is just go down to edit and do what's considered a ×3 addition to it. So instead of it just stitching out one time, it's going to triple it. And you will find that it just adds double the amount of stitches, and you can see how quickly it shows here. That's exactly what you have. So I love picking a stitch, popping in here, adding it to the tripled version, and then touch OK, and I'm ready to stitch it out. You can do that with just about any stitch in this machine, and I love, love, love having that heavier look without having to change thread or needles. Now, let's talk about other uses of the Stitch Creator. Let's say you've been looking at other brands of machines and admiring some of the decorative stitches that they have on their machine. You notice you have a grid. That means that you can plot out your stitches by coming in and placing a stitch. Now, once you have a little dot, you can come in and move it. Place another stitch, come in and move it. What you have so far will kind of preview itself right here on the screen, and you can change anything as you go. So I love the fact that you can come in and start to create your own stitches. Let's say you have something fabulous. Go ahead and touch the heart to save it into the My SewNet. That's your memory part of your machine, and you will be able to retrieve it and go on and start playing with other things. So let me just kind of go ahead and cancel this real quick. Actually, Stitch Creator. I'm going to go ahead and start a new page. Something else that's kind of fun is actually taking a stitch that already exists. So we'll just kind of find a fun stitch. How about in the, let's see here, fun stitches. Oh my gosh, there's so much to choose from. All right, how about just for, let's just do this. I'm in the leaves and flowers area, and I see that this particular stitch has 35 stitches. I can start by unhighlighting all the stitches. So if they are green, that means they're all highlighted. But here I'm sitting right here at that last stitch. And if I just start deleting stitches, I'm taking away part of the design. So like right here, you can see, it's quite amazing what it would look like if it was to then start to repeat. But what if we just wanted something like that? Then when we touch OK, you would have a row of leaves. So something that you can play around, delete something from one stitch, or even be able to play around with combining stitches you have unlimited resources because a lot of those stitches are already made for you, sometimes just picking out the parts and pieces that you need. Now, if you just go back into Stitch Creator, it will be an empty screen. So touch cancel, touch on the stitch on screen, and it will say edit in Stitch Creator. So it brings you back to where you were. So if you didn't have the right amount of stitches or you wanted to edit or add something else, like we could go ahead and add to this. How about from that point, we could add a flower. Maybe that's not the right look. Maybe we need to mirror image that so it actually has a place, or we can delete out stitches that is for connecting at the right point. But it's amazing how many, well, it's fun. We just added an extra leaf in there. How many options that you have. Now, I did mention that we're going to play around with that newest feature. We did start with stitch number, it was 18 that it brought in, and you kind of saw it was kind of a heartbeat concept. So again, if you just unselect everything by selecting the box that was all green, and to kind of get that fun little heartbeat look, you can change where each of these are pulled out to, kind of your EKG kind of action here. I think this is kind of fun. Just kind of find different locations so they're not all the same, and just kind of send that one maybe a little bit further out there. Then they added in a stitch. Let's see here. If you go back to the home and go to the blog, we were looking at that stitch that was actually with a heart, was stitch 6.1.8. All right, so if we can X out of here, go back to start sewing, and then you can find menu 6.1.8. So we added that in here. Now, something that I did notice is that the heart has a little end point at each one of those. So if we just touch OK, you can see that it's going to stitch out kind of that little extra sticky out thing. What if we were to connect it with the actual stitch? So deselect everything and then come right here. See that how that green point is selected? Touch edit and then touch the delete button. So you can actually kind of get it so it all connects back into itself. So if we come back here and delete that, I kind of like how that kind of comes in and out. And do we like that? I do. Oh, how fun would that be? Again, if I want to save it, I can save it. I can save it as heartbeat, type that in, touch OK. I already have one in there because I saved it, but that one is a keeper. So again, I hope you'll play around with the Stitch Creator. If you are looking for fun ways to use your decorative stitches, check out our Pfaff Stitching Cosmos online course options, and those links are in the description below.